Curtis, the Urban Farmer. Today we're here with Jean-Martin Fortier, who is the author of The Market Gardener. And for any of you guys out there who are serious about farming, this is honestly the book. This is, if you're gonna have one book that's relevant to a young farmer, honestly though, that's relevant to a new school farmer, small scale farmer, this is the book. I've read all Elliot Coleman's books, pretty much most of the major books on organic farming. This is the best one I've read so far because it's so relevant to the time. So thanks for taking the time to chat today, man. So before we get into the interview, I just want to say that for all of our West Coast viewers, Jean-Martin's going to be coming out to BC, and he's going to be in Victoria, Nelson, and Kelowna. Is that right?
Yeah, there's one more place.
Is there one more place?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Okay. Anyways, he's coming out to BC. Do your best to come to his workshop because it's going to be worth...
Mid-March.
Mid-March, yeah. Kelowna, you're on the 9th.
Yep.
March 9th. And then Victoria is before or after there somewhere. Where are we going to start here? I mean, there's so much to talk about. One thing I love about what you do, man, is you and Modellen have a real quality of life, and I think something that a lot of young farmers, you know, they get into the business. I mean, speaking from my own personal experience too, you just hustle and hustle and hustle, and you really burn out. And one thing I really like what you talk about in this book is quality of life, and I think it's so important. Where was it where you guys actually were able to start going away on trips and things like that? You know, taking the time to rejuvenate.
Yeah, that's a good question. And you know, I think this is our 12th or 13th season this year we're starting. So obviously when we started, it wasn't always, you know, real nice and roses, but it didn't take long for us to really focus on that aspect of our life and trying to plan for it.
Yeah. Because
we felt that when we started the market garden at the farm, the idea was that we wanted to be outside, we wanted to have a purpose with our work, and we wanted to have the winters off.
Yeah.
That was part of the deal because the guy with whom we apprenticed at first, he was from Quebec also, he was farming in New Mexico. And you know, we knew nothing about organic farming back then. It's really at his farm that we picked up what, you know, the rural lifestyle was, and he was outside all day. He was picking stuff up, growing, selling it at the Santa Fe Farmers Market. People were lining up, thanking him. Everybody was thanking him.
Yeah, just great.
And I was at the cash register, and man, I was seeing how much money he was making every market. And then he would go for 2 months off to Mexico, and I was like, man, this is like the perfect setup. So for us, it was just like when we started, we had this ideal in mind. And so, you know, the first few years, it's kind of harder when you're setting things up, when you're building clientele, and you're building the farm base, but it didn't take long for us to really plan for this to happen. And yeah, we've even in the first years, we would always take 3 weeks or 4 weeks off.
Yeah.
Because taking time off from the farm is also beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely.
You tend to think back of what you've been doing.
Get a different perspective.
Yeah, and just like, you know, farming is really cool, but
it's hard.
There's a lot of cool stuff to do other than farming out there.
Yes, exactly.
So, you know, people always ask me, am I into the winter harvest thing? And I'm like, yeah, it's really cold where I am, and plus, I like to take this time to do other stuff.
Yes.
So, this being said, then that means that my growing season, I need to make all the cash I need. Yeah. And if I don't want to be burned out, that means I want to be super efficient at every step of the way.
Yeah.
And that's been our motto since the start.
So, you know, kind of going on that efficiency and just maybe into production. So, you know, 140 grand on 1.5 acres. As far as farming goes, that's an amazing number. One thing that really interests me about what you guys have done is that, like, from an urban farming perspective, if I hear that number, I would go, oh, you know, you're growing high value crops. You're growing lots of greens and microgreens and things like that. But you guys are growing a wide diversity of vegetables. I think the only things you aren't really growing are potatoes and like winter squash and melons and things like that.
Yeah, rutabagas and.
But you're growing cabbage.
Yeah, we're growing
onions,
everything.
Garlic. So what?
Cauliflower.
And so what is that like? just some of the technical sides of that for some of our like real hardcore farmer viewers. What does that look like? How are you able to maintain that scale of production when you're growing some crops that are worth like $1 or $2 a pound?
Well, I think one of the reasons is that we're doing a lot of succession cropping, for one. You know?
Yeah.
We're going from one crop to the other, and we're planning things pretty right in the winter. We spend a lot of the time in our crop planning. But through the years, we've kind of focused on certain crops that are more profitable, but we always know that on the table at the farmer's market, you know, you're going to sell a lot of tomatoes, you're going to sell a lot of salad mix, a lot of carrot bunches, but you're also going to sell a little bit of broccoli, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And so through the years, we kind of know what we're going to be selling, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and we're growing this also.
Yeah.
So at one point, you know, we were farming for more of the lucrative crops, but more and more we're going back to having more of these less lucrative crops because we know that our market will absorb them.
Yeah.
And if they're not buying it from us, they're buying it from our neighbor, and we don't want to be giving him our sales. But yeah, in a nutshell, it's not about, in CSA, you know, CSA is also, you know, you need to find a balance between growing crops that are profitable and crops that you can buy. And you said that we don't grow potatoes. Reason is like my neighbor, he's mechanized.
Yeah, exactly.
He's mechanized to plant the potatoes, to harvest them, to brush them.
Yeah.
And I'm harvesting potatoes with a pitchfork and brushing them with a hand brush, and I'm bringing them to market.
Forget about it.
It's the same potatoes.
Yeah.
You know, I can't say these are more artisanal or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just potatoes. But when I'm bringing salad heads, you know, my neighbor, he's not mechanized.
Exactly.
You can't harvest them mechanized.
Yeah.
And all the roots that we grow them with the tops on, because when you're mechanized, you can't wash roots with the tops.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
we have an advantage there. And you know, the tops, we cut them as we sell them.
Yeah, people just want you to rip them off, and
but still,
but to see it with it.
Yeah,
right?
they pay a premium for it.
Yeah,
so there's a
exactly.
little bit of marketing into this, but And we sell. You know, you said the number of the price, and we sell at a reasonable price. These are not jacked up price like when I go to New York. Nothing against New York.
Yeah, or Vancouver.
I don't know. I haven't been to the
Well,
market.
you'll see some good prices.
I'd be rich if I would be selling at these prices.
Well, you know what? I think the key is, Jean-Martin, though, it's about if you can charge $16 a pound for mesclun mix, but if you're going home with half of it, then what's the point? You might as well be charging $8, then you'll move all of it, right? So that's the thing that a lot of farmers don't really think about. There's a total balance. So just going on like succession planting, more technical farmer stuff. Tonight with your presentation, you talked about calendar planning and all this. Is there any room in your guys' farming where you are improvising a little bit? Like maybe it's things like mesclun or more quicker growing crops. Are you really got it down so much now that you're following this schedule?
Yeah, we're following the schedule.
Really?
Yeah, it's like a god. We're like.
Yeah. But what if you're noticing halfway through a season, it's like, well, this isn't selling as much this year then?
Then we're taking notes, but it's already done. And
so you change that for next year?
Yeah. And that's been the fine tuning, and that's one thing that I really like about this idea of not growing bigger, but growing better. Is instead of like trying to grow, you know, more of this, more of that, we're just kind of refining our crop planning to make sure that we grow exactly what we need. And it's just details, you know, the devil's in the details. But you know, the crop planning is pretty rigorous, and we focus on it a lot, and we're concentrating when we do it, because if we make a mistake in the crop planning, we're making a mistake in the fields, because we're really following the crop plan.
And so, you know,
and because one crop succeeds one another in the crop planning, if I change something, then it changes
the whole chain.
Yeah, so I can't really do it. So I need to be really careful when I'm crop planning and when I'm taking notes about what went wrong, so that the year after I'm not making the same mistake twice.
So this is something a lot of farmers ask me all the time, is the whole crop planning. It seems so daunting to a lot of people. Would you say the majority of your crop planning every year is just based on markets, based on what you knew you could sell? Is that pretty much you guys' approach?
Well, our CSA is half of the sales, so we kind of decide what we're putting. It started with that. It started with CSA. We would plan exactly what we wanted for each
to have in each
baskets.
box,
And then from there we thought, market is like the same thing, pretty much. So we grew a bit like that. thinking we're doing like 200 boxes.
Yeah.
And we were doing 140 CSA and 60 at market. And now we're doing a bit more of market than CSA because it really grew at market. But yeah, planning is rigorous, but I don't know, it's just about finding the proper tuning about everything that we need to grow. Not too much, because then you're losing space in the garden, you're wasting time, harvesting, cleaning, or whatever, and just making sure that you're not lacking the stuff you need. I guess this is experience with time, and some people look at our numbers now and they're like super impressed, but it took us 10 years to get to where we are here now. My thought is that all the learning curve, all the things the mistake we've made, all the things that we've discovered, if people can start from there,
then they've gained 5 years.
Yeah, that'll help.
Oh, absolutely.
And that'll help.
That's the thing with this book. Buy the book because it's going to save you years of time. If I would have had this book when I started, there's so many things that I would have done and things that I wouldn't have done because they're in this book. So again, the book, fantastic. Talk about, from my end, I talk about this all the time, but I really like your perspective on it. Talk about beds. Talk about why, just give the listener, the viewers and listeners some basic points of why are beds important?
Yeah, well, permanent raised beds.
Yeah,
I would
permanent
say
beds.
permanent
30-inch beds.
Well, I've been growing in permanent raised beds ever since I started market gardening, and for me it's so obvious the reason why that I can't even imagine people are not growing in this kind of setup. Well, so permanent raised beds. The reason why we don't need a tractor on the farm is because the beds are permanent. We don't need to be disturbing and moving a lot of dirt every year to plow, disc, hill, make beds, because the beds are already there.
Yeah.
And we learned that from the Cubans, because the Cubans, they've been growing in organoponicos forever. And it's just like, why would you haul all this dirt when you can just make the beds?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And then it's just the beds, when it's permanent, you can invest a lot more time into putting a lot of organic matter into it, because it's like this fixed element. You're not spreading manure or compost everywhere and then shaping out the beds. You're just losing compost to the aisles or whatever.
Yeah.
So you're rationalizing the usage of organic amendments. Then the fact that it's raised, it helps with drainage. In our northern climate, that's really important because there's snow melt, because the spring is cold, and we need to warm up the soil as fast as we can. Perhaps in southern climate you would have dug beds, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But just to create the biology that you need to get these intensive spacings, just the bed is just the way to go.
And going on that, you
and all the tools also.
Yeah.
Tools for market gardening, all standardized to 30-inch.
Yeah, you talked about row cover, how you can use, if you have 5 rows of carrots in a 30-inch bed opposed to 5 rows over 5 feet, you use less material as far as row covers. There's all these costs and savings, less irrigation.
Yeah.
Everything is
the same row cover will cover 5 times as much area, so it will cost 1/5 of the price and go, most importantly, 5 times faster to do your operation. And everything we do is about efficiency, because at the end we're talking about lifestyle. If you want to have a life, you need to be really efficient at what you're doing when you're market gardening, because you can work 2,000 hours a week and never see the end of it, or you can plan and be really rigorous and really efficient and then work 8 to 5, shut down the operation, go have a life with your kids, your wife, and go biking. It's just,
talk a little bit about soil management. One thing I love with you guys is that you've implemented this. The Broad Fork, the name of your farm, La Grille. How do you say it in French?
La Grelinette.
La Grelinette.
Are we filming that we're drinking Pabst?
Oh yeah, we're filming that. Talk about rototilling, the power harrow. When do you rototill? Because I know with some crops as a farmer, there's a lot more crop residue that's left over. And so are there still times where just using the BCS tiller implement is necessary?
All right, so if you're reading The Market Gardener, you'll hear and understand that we've moved away from that and we're talking about minimal tillage. All right, so I could explain that to the viewers, but that doesn't mean that we're really against the rototiller.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do is move away from it. Because the rototiller is really handy. You know, we farmed with it for a couple of years, and what it does is that when you go through with it on a VCS or a walking tractor, it's really heavy and it works. Is that the soil looks great, but eventually it compacts the soil more.
Yeah.
So if you're renting land, if you're growing on people's lawn for 1 or 2 seasons, there's no problem.
Yeah.
But if you're farming for 30 years
Yeah.
on that acre and a half intensively, rototiller is a big no-no.
Yeah.
So that was the reason why we moved away from it, and replacing it with tarps to prepare soil beds, because we're leaving tarps for 2 to 3 weeks, and it's just crazy. You take the tarps off, and then poof, it's clean. It's ready to seed.
Yeah.
And then using the broad fork instead to aerate the soil without turning it, and using the power harrow because it has time working on a horizontal level, making it so that you're not inverting layers and you're working shallow tillage to do soil prep. And it has a roller in the back. It's just the perfect bed preparation tool.
Yeah.
And the French growers, they were telling these things when I was there in 2005. They were like, "You're using rototillers?" And we're like, "Yeah." And they're like, "You need to move away from this because if you want to be farming here for a long time, you need to move away."
Yeah.
And so it's not to be dogmatic. It's just it's an approach. You know? And I still use a tiller sometimes. In the spring, when I want to do early plantings and I want to heat up the soil, I'll go with the tiller. It doesn't matter. Anyway, the earthworms are not there at that point in time. And if I haven't planned properly my succession, and I don't have time to put a tarp to clear out the beds, perhaps I'll use the tiller.
Yeah.
And it's fine if I use it. I won't. I'm like whatever.
Moderation.
I don't want to be relying only on that tool
Yeah.
for doing all my soil.
Well, like what you said there too about what's appropriate for your situation. You said farming for 10 to 30 years, right? Farming for an urban farmer who might be on a plot for only 5 years, different applications. So it's all about, you said this even tonight, it's all about the appropriate technology, what's right for each situation, what's right for the bioregion or whichever it is. There's so many different circumstances in
But
farming.
understand though, if you're using the tiller, you're bringing weed seeds up.
Yeah.
So be prepared to have more weeds.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're prepared for it, fine. If you're not prepared for it and you're being infested by weeds and you're thinking about, wow, I'm being infested by weeds all the time, I'm having a hard time managing my fields, well, perhaps you're using the wrong tool for what you want to do. Well, so it's about making these links and these connections.
Yeah, well, this is the neat thing that's so different about farming in a rural context and farming in an urban context. For me, I don't have the weed pressure in the city that people do in the countryside, right? So it's a different thing. So again, it just goes back to what's appropriate for the situation. And you know, when I was running my farm by bike for the first 3 years, pulling that harrow that thing is heavy.
It's heavy.
I
wouldn't pull a power.
My tiller, the BCS with the tiller is heavy enough on its own. With the harrow, that thing's nuts,
it's
right?
Crazy. Yeah, I would use a tiller in that setup for sure. And again, it goes down to making these connections. It's not about this way of doing it. It's about understanding why this, why that, the implication. Like it's like tractors.
Yeah.
People are always asking me what I have against tractors. I like tractors. I think they're great, but there's an implication. If you're using a tractor in your setup, it's defining your whole cropping system.
Yeah.
All your spacings are defined by the tillage tool that you're using, your weeding tools, all your crop spacing, and then it gets to be an extensive system. And it's fine if that's what you want to be doing, but if you're growing 100 member CSA, you don't need a tractor.
Exactly.
You get a walking tractor.
I think we should leave it at that. That's a great way to wrap it up. It's all about what's appropriate for the situation.
Cool.
Jean-Martin, The Market Gardener, you guys, check it out. Honestly, best farming book I've ever read. This guy.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot, brother.
All right, Curtis.
Okay,
Love you, man.
we'll go drink some beers.
Yeah, let's go for beers.